Well,
All right, it's
great.
all yours.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. And I thank you for your patience while I unfortunately could not be at my desk, but I'm glad to be able to join you thanks to the miracle of technology. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk with you all about the amazing things that we're doing now in Arlington. Just by way of background, Central Union Mission, if you've been in the area for any length of time, you've probably heard the name Central Union Mission. We're actually the oldest private social service agency in the DC area. We just celebrated our 140th anniversary, and we've been around since basically the days coming after the Civil War. And that really was part of our founding. We were founded by a young pastor named Latham Douglas, who was starting a church here in DC. And as he got to know the area, he was running across these men living homeless on the streets, and he realized that these guys were veterans. Well, if you do the math, 140 years, these were Civil War veterans who had lost everything in the war, families, fortunes, arms, legs, homes. And good old Latham said, no, this isn't okay. So he got together with a group of churches and founded what is today Central Union Mission. The organization has obviously grown substantially over 140 years. We still serve veterans, but our universe of people that we help is way beyond that. Many people know us by our men's shelter. Our men's shelter is on Massachusetts Avenue, 2 blocks down from Union Station. This is a 170 bed facility. And if you've never been to a shelter before, the shelter does everything you would expect a homeless shelter to do: the beds, the meals, and the showers. Our model is quite a bit more sophisticated and strategic than that. So people can come, and of course they can get beds, meals, and showers, but within our facility, we have a full medical clinic, dental clinic, social services, legal aid, job training, job placement, Alcoholics Anonymous groups, and so forth. That's really our strategic model: is co-located services, trying to put as many services under one roof as possible. This is really seen as best practice across the country, because what you're doing is you're both meeting the immediate needs of the poor, but you're also providing the tools to help people get out of poverty and off the street permanently. So that's our shelter. Second to that, but equally impressive, is our Family Ministry Center. That's also in DC. It's on Bladensburg Road. Historically, this facility was a food and clothing pantry and continues to be a food and clothing pantry, serves about 5,000 people a month. And it's our primary touch point with women and families historically. We have the same model there. So people can come and get their groceries and clothing for the week, but while they're there, we also have job training and job placement, English as a second language classes, ESL classes, and so forth. So again, that's our model. In DC, we also have a 24-bed transition home. That's sort of that next step to help people get off of the street permanently. And in Brookville, Maryland, we have this little gem called Camp Bennett. This is a camp facility for kids who live in poor families. They get to come 4 times a year and have the full Christian camp experience. They sleep in cabins. We have a zip line, a ropes course, horses, a swimming pool. They have a wonderful time. And so that facility is really just a little gem that we have in Maryland. Well, last year, myself and the board, as we were thinking about what's next for Central Union Mission, we've had this huge presence in DC and Maryland for 140 years. What was the next thing we really felt God calling us to do? And as we thought about that and prayed about it, we all unanimously agreed that after 140 years, it was high time that we got a presence in Northern Virginia. After all, Northern Virginia does have people who are living in poverty, and it has its own homelessness problems as well. So we started that process late last year of just doing reconnaissance, figuring out where did we need to be? What we wanted to do in this process, we wanted to be very intentional about it. We didn't want to go into an area that was already well served or overserved and come in and simply be duplicating what everybody else did. We wanted to find an area where there were clearly needs, where there was a deficiency in services. So we started looking. We looked as far west as Leesburg. We looked at Fairfax proper. We looked at North Arlington, South Arlington, Alexandria, the Route 1 corridor, and we landed in South Arlington. I'm sure you're familiar with the area, but this is right inside that kind of delta of Route 7, Columbia Pike, and Carlin Springs Road. It's a walking distance from Bailey's Crossroads. It's not too far from Boston Commons Mall, right off Carlin Springs Road, 7th Road, that area. The reason why we chose this location was, one, it's embedded in a community in need. That area has not only an incredible amount of diversity, but it also has a lot of poverty as well. The second thing was that it's very accessible. So we want this facility to serve not only people in South Arlington, but people from throughout Northern Virginia. And the beautiful thing about this location is that it's served by two bus lines, the Arlington Connector Bus and Metro Bus. So it's highly accessible. And thirdly we're being very intentional about partnering with other agencies, including Arlington County government, in the provision of services at this facility. So right now we are leasing space inside of Greenbrier Baptist Church. It's a building owned by Greenbrier Baptist Church that they really weren't utilizing. They had this vision of having a ministry center inside their building. We had the same vision. God put us together, and we got this thing launched about 2.5 months ago. And the way that I like to talk about this facility is the analogy of a hospital. So what do you have inside of a hospital? In a hospital, you have lots of specialists, right? My organization, so we leased the facility, we renovated it, we run it day to day, but my organization provides some of those specialties. There's a food and clothing pantry inside the facility. We run that. We do the computer training, job placement. We're about to hire a full-time social worker. But on top of that, we want this to be a platform for other organizations to provide their services to this community inside this facility as well. We do this by invitation, completely free of charge. So for example, we provide legal aid in this facility, and that's provided by Good Samaritan Advocates. There's a kids after school program being provided by Arlington Bridge Builders. There's a parenting class being provided by Capitol Hill Pregnancy Center. We're about to start a program to help provide trauma care for immigrants. That's going to be provided by a group called AUDA. And then we have immigration services coming in. So again, that full wraparound suite of services. And with this model, everybody wins. The community wins because you're providing all those services under one roof. People don't need to go to North Arlington for this, Fairfax for that, Alexandria for the other thing. They're able to have one-stop shop. And the model proves that people have much more successful outcomes when you do that. And we're able to provide also central case management from this facility as well. So that's the model. And let me put it to you this way. So we did a grand opening event about 2.5 months ago. It was on a Tuesday night, very well attended from people in the community. That was the other thing that we wanted to be very intentional about, was involving the community in a meaningful way. And so we did a lot of time kind of engaging the community before we launched this thing to make sure the needs that they had were being served by the services that we're providing. But we did this grand opening on a Tuesday night. 9 a.m. the next morning, we had people lined up and at the door asking for services, whether it was food and clothing, needing help with job training or job placement, a variety of services. And I got to tell you, I mean, I've been working for nonprofits for about 35 years, and I've never seen something take off and grow so fast in my entire career. It really confirmed that we're in the right place at the right time with the right services. Just to give you a metric, an indicator. So the food and clothing pantry, we distribute food and clothing twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays. It started off with 40 people. We're now at 120 people every distribution, and we haven't even been open for 3 months. That's going to continue to grow. And the thing that we saw that's really beautiful is that the community is really embracing this, not only as a partner, but they're giving us their trust, which is really amazing. So when they come in and get food and clothing, we build a relationship with them, and we already see people kind of getting involved with other activities that we provide. So they may have come for the groceries, but now they're like, oh, you have English as a second language class. How do I sign up for that? You have parenting classes, which has been one of the fastest growing things. How do we sign up for that? I need an attorney. How do I get involved with that? So all of that model is really coming to fruition in a meaningful way. The other thing is, while the majority of the local community are people living in low income, it's not everybody. It's not exclusively that. but we've had great engagement from people that live in the community who are not impoverished. They see us as a valuable partner. We're not seeing any of that NIMBY stuff that you sometimes see happen when you bring a facility like this into a neighborhood. People are very much positive about our presence there. So right now it's a 3-story facility. We're leasing one of the floors. I think we're going to outgrow that floor very quickly and grow into another floor of the building. But it's growing fast. The other thing that I want to say is that Arlington County government has been so welcoming and so engaging. It's a very different experience than doing this kind of work in Washington, D.C. We're very intentional about getting the word out that we were coming, what we plan to do. And Arlington, most of the agencies within our Arlington County government, whether it was the Housing Authority, Human Services, all the various agencies have been very proactive, reaching out to us to not only welcome us, but to offer their support and looking for ways that we can partner. So that's been refreshing in a big way and very much a blessing. And so as we continue to move ahead, after the first of the year, we have a ton of workshops lined up. Actually, I just inked an agreement for a couple of groups to come in and do a workshop to help people start their own business. So for a lot of people who may not be able to get a job, or maybe their immigration status precludes them from getting certain types of labor, there is the opportunity to start your own small business, whether that's doing landscaping or house cleaning, whatever it is. We're actually going to have a clinic with 3 different agencies coming in, giving people instruction on how to do that, and actually offering startup capital grants. So that's something that's coming in the new year. We're also engaging with Arlington Police in a very positive way. They want to come in and help people understand kind of what their rights are, or something basic like, what do you do in a traffic stop to make sure that it doesn't go south? So all kinds of very practical workshops we're doing on top of the regular classes, the ESL classes and everything else that we're doing. So it's really been great. It's really been amazing. We're very glad to be in Arlington. This is probably one of the most important things we've done in 140 years. And I only see upside potential. I think there's going to continue to be a lot of growth. So that's sort of the story of where we've been, where we're going right now. And hopefully all of that makes sense to you guys, but I would be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, well, we do have a couple. One is, can your organization help people who have lost their essential paperwork or maybe never had it in the first place?
Yeah, that's very common actually at all of our facilities, and oftentimes is the first step for somebody to get social services available to them, or even just to get employed. But yeah, if folks come in, we help them. Usually the first step is helping them to get their birth certificate. That leads to a social security card and then a photo ID and so forth. But yeah, that's something that we can help people with.
Okay, do you have a need for volunteers to help with some of the programs you've mentioned?
Yes, I'm so glad somebody asked it, so I didn't have to solicit it. Yeah, so we have a small staff at this facility right now. We're trying to hire up a few more people, but like all of our work, volunteers are the lifeblood of the organization. Right now, what we're looking for are volunteer greeters, and it's more than just saying hello. We're really looking for people who speak English and Spanish, who, when new folks come in the door, can give them some direction about the services that are provided there and get them in the right place. So we need help with that. We need help with our food distributions. We are a Christian organization, and we do provide things like Bible studies and fellowship groups. So we're looking for churches to come alongside us to make those offerings available during the day and in the evenings as well. And then there are going to be some volunteer opportunities to actually teach classes. We've already done our first basic computer class, and that actually used our curriculum, but a volunteer led it. So there's more and more opportunities for that kind of thing as well. The other thing that I want to mention is food drives. This is something that volunteers tend to really like to do because it's tangible. Central Union Mission, we have a huge food collection and distribution network. We actually take in somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 million of donated food every year. Historically, the vast majority of that has been distributed through our DC Family Center. A portion of it goes to our shelter to provide meals. But now that we're providing a food distribution in Arlington as well, it's stretching those resources a little thinner. So we are asking people, if they're interested in volunteering, to consider doing a non-perishable food drive. They can bring whatever they collect directly to the center there on 7th Road, 5401 7th Road South. We're really, again, it's really non-perishable stuff, canned food, rice, beans, and so forth.
Okay, a couple more questions. Will your Arlington facility accept personal donations like books, clothing, DVDs, CDs?
No, the only thing we're accepting as far as direct contributions at this facility is non-perishable food. The reason why we're not accepting the rest is that we don't have the infrastructure and manpower to receive and sort donations at this facility, things like clothing and so forth. All of that, no matter where it's coming from, we say the same thing to people in DC and Maryland. We have one central receiving facility on Bladensburg Road in DC for clothing and all other contributions.
Okay. How do you partner with other organizations to meet the needs of the people you're serving?
Right. That is so critical to the model and the success of what we're doing. So partnering with other organizations can be anything from leading an ongoing service. As I mentioned, things like legal aid is provided by a third-party partner, Good Samaritan Advocates. The parenting class being provided by Capitol Hill Pregnancy Center, Arlington Bridge Builders doing the after-school program. ESL classes, that is completely volunteer driven. That's not even through an organization. That's just a bunch of like-minded individuals that wanted to be a part of what we're doing and provide that very valuable service. So if there's anybody listening today that is part of an organization that wants to engage with us, they can contact me. We're glad to meet with you and talk about the types of service you're thinking you may want to provide, and then we kind of get you plugged into the structure.
Right. Next question. This area is very diverse with people from all over the world, many different languages, different religions. How do you make them feel welcome if they aren't Christian, or do you find they just don't engage with Greenbrier Baptist Church?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our tradition for 140 years is this. We are a Christian organization. We don't hide that at all. It's front and center of what we do. We don't ram that down people's throats. When people come to any of our facilities, they are greeted with love and respect because that's what we're commanded as Christians to do. But we don't Bible thump. We don't force people to convert. We make the opportunity available for people to learn about Christianity and the gospel. But we don't force that on people. It is not a requirement to receive services in any way, shape, or form. And that's been very successful for 140 years at all of our facilities. We have lots of people who come, many of which aren't Christian or part of the Christian tradition. We have people who come who are Jews, Muslims, Buddhists. We even have volunteer groups that come that are not Christian groups that volunteer at our facilities because of the way that we approach it. On the language piece, that's an excellent point. Somebody told me at this Greenbrier facility, there was a statistic somebody told me that they saw from census data. It went something like this. Within a 1 mile radius of this facility, there is something like over 25 ethnic groups represented in the community. So I can tell you just in the short time that I've engaged this community, I've met not only Hispanics, people from all over Latin America, but also Ethiopians, Eritreans, Iranians, Vietnamese folks. So it is a very richly diverse area. And we are equally welcoming of all of them. I would say so far, of the people who have come to receive services and help, I would say a good 85% are Hispanic and Spanish speakers so far. But not exclusively. We're prepared for that diversity, continue to have a full representation within our facility. We're going to meet everybody where they are. The challenge is probably going to be the language piece, because we do have capability to do everything in English and Spanish. We may not have the opportunity, for example, to teach a computer class in Farsi or Vietnamese. But we're going to continue to grow and continue to develop capacity to do that. So we are very much open to providing relevant services to as many ethnic groups as we can that are represented in that community.
What type of food does your pantry need? This person says they've read that food pantries often get overrun with cereal, which is hard to eat without milk. So, what do you need most?
That's a great question and a great point. So obviously non-perishables. I would say things like rice, pasta, dried beans, all forms of canned food, whether it's canned fruit, canned vegetables, it's all good. Canned soup, all of those varieties of canned goods is fine. We get all kinds of donations along that line. We want to try to make the food that we distribute as relevant, so to speak, or palatable to the folks that we're serving. So again, because 85% of the people who are coming are Hispanic, and beans and rice are a staple in just about every Hispanic culture, that's probably where we see a lot of the greatest desire as far as donated food. But we will take, we had somebody come in that provided 2 cases of, that kind of boxed macaroni and cheese mix. That's good too, because that's simple to make, and that's something that a lot of kids will enjoy. So we'll take any non-perishable foods, but I'm glad to hear somebody ask a specific question about relevance. I would say all of those canned foods that I mentioned, plus rice and beans.
Okay, next question. Are you gearing up to try to help undocumented families who must be pretty fearful about what's going to happen since the last election?
Yeah, indeed. And like every single one of our facilities, we see a lot of folks who are undocumented. And frankly, they were living in fear even before the outcome of this election. Nobody wants to be deported. Nobody wants to be separated from their kids, that type of thing, which has been going on for quite a while. Yeah, so here's the deal. So right now, we offer a couple services, but we're planning and hoping on something significant to happen next year. Right now, we have a Path to Citizenship class that we offer. This has been going on Friday nights. And basically the point of this class is to help people just generally understand what is the path to citizenship, what are the different things that need to happen. We also have the ability to provide referrals to agencies that provide immigration services. So there's a group called RILA, R-I-L-A, that we're partnered with that does legal asylum work. They are busy beyond belief, but we could still refer to them. And there's a couple of other agencies that do that we can refer to. Here's the thing that we're working on and hoping comes to fruition early in 2025. There's a church group in Fairfax that is starting to create and train attorneys to provide exclusively immigration services. And while they will be based in Fairfax, they have very much a need to have a satellite office in Arlington. They're actually partners of mine because it's my church. And I think they are planning, there's still some things we need to figure out, to have their satellite office in our building. If that comes to fruition, we will have focused immigration legal services on site at our facility. When it comes, immigration law is incredibly complicated, as you all know, and that's why a lot of charities don't get involved in immigration law, because it is so involved and time consuming. And it's never free either. Even charitable legal services for immigration, there's always a financial cost to that because there's so many fees along the way. So if they're in our building, we're going to hopefully find ways to scholarship people to help defray some of those costs. But we hope to be able to make an official announcement on that in early 2025. But right now we have the ability to do some general information, some basic knowledge sharing, and then referrals to other agencies.
Okay, next question is, do you need things like Pampers, disposable diapers for babies?
Great question. Absolutely affirmative. Diapers at all of our facilities are probably one of the most coveted resources, because if you have kids, you need them, and they are expensive, and not a lot of charities have them because there's oftentimes not a lot of resources that donate that kind of thing. We're in the process of working out a partnership with the DC Diaper Bank. Believe it or not, there is such a thing, and we're hoping to start receiving that type of thing. But whether we get that or not, there is very much a need for people to donate Pampers, diapers, that type of thing. They can bring it right to our facility right there on 7th Road.
Okay. Can we donate food anytime during the week when your office is open?
Yes, we are open our standard business hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And they can bring stuff anytime.
Okay. How big is your staff?
Okay, so throughout the whole organization, we employ about 60 people, 60. That's full-timers and part-timers spread across all 5 of our ministry locations. Right now at Mission Nova, that's our Northern Virginia facility, we have 3 full-time staff assigned to it, and then a number of other people on my staff do fractional work there. So for example, people in my workforce development and education team are the ones leading like the computer training class, job training, job placement that are there 2 days a week. So they're doing sort of fractional work there. But this facility has a full-time site manager. We are currently recruiting for a full-time bilingual social worker. And then we have people in the food pantry at least twice a week.
Okay. And how do you train your staff to provide all these different kinds of services?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we hire people, we absolutely are looking for them to have a background in the services that they're providing. So for example, we're recruiting for a social worker. The requirements are the person needs to be bilingual, English, Spanish plus. They need to not only have the right licensing and documentation, but they need to have experience working with a very diverse client base. They need to have experience working with people who are coming from poverty backgrounds. So we incorporate that into the hiring process. Sometimes we may hire people who have all the right background skills, but maybe they need some training up in specific areas, and we provide that internally. We do the same thing with volunteers. We try to find volunteers that have some background in the area where they're volunteering, and maybe we supplement with some additional training.
Okay. Are you currently looking to hire people, and how many and in what areas?
Yeah, we actually, to be honest with you, and I think just about every nonprofit would say the same thing I am, one of our greatest challenges right now is filling vacant roles in the organization. That's been true for the past couple of years. It's just a very weird employment market. If you go to our website, missiondc.org, there's a whole employment page there. Right now, we are recruiting for a bilingual social worker at Mission Nova, a social worker at our DC Family Center. We're looking for 2 job training and job placement counselors. We have an open position for a cook as well. And we also have a position in our fundraising, our development office as well. All of those are listed at missiondc.org.
Okay. And how's the mission funded?
Great question. We are unlike most charities in a number of ways, but one of those ways is that we are 100% privately funded. We don't accept a nickel of government money. Not that there's anything wrong with accepting government money. I've worked for many agencies that do, but we are funded by individuals, corporations, foundations, and churches, 100%. The reason why we don't take government money, and believe me, every agency that we're in touch with wants to provide financial support. The challenge is that as a plainly Christian organization, we can't delink our faith stuff from who we are as an organization. And most of the time when you take government grants, there's stipulations that there can be no, I use the word faithiness in the organization or the kind of work that we do. So we could never accept government money with integrity because we wouldn't be able to decouple those things 100% in our work. So we made a decision 140 years ago to not accept government money. But we do engage with government very thoroughly everywhere where we are: DC government, Arlington government, Montgomery County government. we're in partnership with the government. We're at the table on strategy. There's a mutual respect because we have expertise, as do they. It's just we don't take the government money.
Okay, are you seeing many older adults who need your services?
Yeah, across all 5 of our ministry locations, it is pretty diverse. At our DC Family Center, I would say the average age of the person we serve there is probably 50 years old. So there is a good mix of senior citizens, as well as young single moms, young couples with kids that are just struggling to make it. One thing that I didn't mention earlier is, conversation's never complete without talking about COVID, right? So COVID was a very hard time for us. We came through it very strong. We actually did not have one case of COVID at our shelter during the bulk of the pandemic. But one of the things that we saw was an exponential increase in the number of people, especially families, coming to us for food assistance. That went up by at least 75% and has not gone back down. And what happened was, you guys know the news as much as I do. So most of those jobs that people talk about, those jobs that were lost during COVID, a high percentage of those jobs were in kind of the lower income strata. So people who worked at restaurants that went out of business, food trucks that went out of business, things that you wouldn't even think about. So the whole work at home phenomenon. So a lot of companies have abandoned their offices, so they no longer require office cleaning crews. There was a lot of jobs lost there. So a lot of families who were already underemployed completely lost their job. And so there's been a real surge in the number of people coming for that type of assistance, and that hasn't dropped off, but it has made us look very strategically at the type of job training and job placement that we do. We're trying to upskill or reskill people so that they're relevant to the post-pandemic job market. And in DC, that's not an easy thing. The DC area, I mean, I think you all know that the workforce of the job market in the DC area is predominantly white collar, right? That's what we do here. Very few jobs that pay a livable wage, that are available to people who oftentimes are largely uneducated, right? And so we're looking at, okay, so what are the jobs that are available here for people who need a livable wage and they're largely uneducated? And the reality is, outside of basic service type stuff, like people who maybe still work in a restaurant, it's the trades. So things like carpentry, painting, HVAC, welding, all of those things, there is actually a hot job market here. And that's our plan, is to start reskilling people in those areas.
Given the success that you're having here in Arlington, are you starting to look more widely at other parts of the district, other parts of the DC area?
Probably. So we just want to start. We want to get this thing in South Arlington in a good place, and then our mind and our heart is open to do additional things as well. We don't want to take on too much so that we're doing everything poorly, but there is very much a possibility that we would grow beyond just having one facility in South Arlington.
Okay. Next question is, what if clients are disabled or have other healthcare needs? How do you handle those? And do you order and dispense medications?
Okay. I'll answer the last question first. We do not get involved with ordering or dispensing medications. There's a whole protocol of licensing and liability that comes along with that. For people who have chronic health issues or have disability, it depends on the facility. So we want to make sure people are in the right place, getting the best care. And if that's not something we can provide, we make sure we get them to that. But just to kind of outline the health services that we do provide. So at our shelter on Massachusetts Avenue, we have a full medical clinic and a full dental clinic in that facility. So we have the ability to in partnership with Unity Healthcare to provide treatment on site for certain things. If the person's health issues are beyond what can be provided on site, we get them immediately to another facility. At our family center in DC, we have a partnership with MedStar Georgetown. They do not only they do health clinics, topical health clinics, but we also have a medical resident that is there once a week, being able to assess and triage people to help them with whatever their issue is or get them referred out. At Mission Nova, we're very prayerful about this because we very much want to provide some form of health services. We're in active conversations with both the Arlington Free Clinic and the Fairfax Free Clinic to establish some type of services on site. The reason why we're working with both is this facility in South Arlington is very close to the Arlington-Fairfax border. And both agencies want to work with us. They kind of have their mandate. One works in Arlington, one works in Fairfax, but they're both trying to come together to figure out how could they collaborate on site at Mission Nova to provide not only things like useful health clinics, like clinics on diabetes, elderly care, maternal health, but also hopefully eventually that leads to a similar thing like we do at our other sites, which is providing an on-site health clinic for people to be looked at, evaluated, triaged, treated if we can, if not referred out to another site.
Okay, you haven't mentioned anything about home health care as an opportunity for your clients. Is that something you're involved with, or do you refer people to other agencies that can go to people's houses?
For home health care, yeah, we don't quite have the skill set, or we're not really equipped or have capacity for that. But we do have referral partners that we can help get people with. The only thing we do in that regard, and this is primarily in DC right now, is that we do provide food deliveries to some people who are shut-ins, people who can't come out of their home to come to our food pantry. We actually do some food deliveries for folks like that.
I think my question was misunderstood. I meant as a training opportunity.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you mean for training folks within the organization, we'd be very open to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. On average, how long do clients stay at your various facilities? Is your goal to help them to be not reliant on your services?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is most relevant to our shelter facility where people are having overnight accommodations. The ultimate goal is for people to receive the tools they need to get off of the street permanently. And for folks at the shelter, that's the direction that we try to steer people to. The reality is that not everybody has the wherewithal to do that. That could be because they've been on the street for 20 years and they've become acculturated to that lifestyle. And regardless of the services we make available, they simply don't have the wherewithal to move beyond that, where they are in life. But there are a lot of people that we're able to get to and give them the opportunity to kind of get stabilized mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, vocationally, financially. And we help them with our programs to kind of get to that point where when they leave our shelter, they don't recidivate back to the street. So that is very much part of what we try to do. But the reality is that not everybody has the wherewithal to do it. So at our shelter, for example, we try to make it, it's supposed to be a temporary shelter. So, during normal times, we have a policy that's 15 days in, and then you got to stay somewhere else for 15 days before you can come back. And that's really intended to help people not take up permanent residence at the facility. But there are exceptions to that. People who are senior citizens that simply don't have the wherewithal to kind of move down that continuum of becoming independent, they can stay with us indefinitely without a problem. Most of our overnight guest staffs, even if they're not, right now we have the capacity to let people stay as long as they need to, but we're always trying to come alongside them to encourage them and equip them to move on, to have better things in life. And then there are people who simply don't have either the mental or physical wherewithal to do it. So we try to contextualize everybody's situation and meet them where they are and provide the best services we can.
Are you familiar with the Colmore Free Clinic on Leesburg Pike in Falls Church?
I am, and that's actually the free clinic, one of the two free clinics that we're talking to right now about a partnership, and they do great work. I believe the lady's name there is Lynette.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions we've got piled up right now. If anybody else has a question or a comment, feel free to chime in.
I was just going to ask another question in terms of older adults. I mean, if they need some kind of long-term care because they can't get along by themselves, and your staff has that awareness that, you know, they're either going to go back on the street, they're going to stay with you, but they would certainly benefit from services of a long-term care facility, but they don't have the the money or whatever. What do you do with those folks?
Yeah, well, you know, we're not going to let them. We're not going to let them be out on the street. So what happens is our social workers evaluates their situation and what their needs are. If it's something that we can appropriately do internally, in other words, we have some senior citizens that stay at our shelter, but then at other facilities where we don't have a shelter, our social workers find the right resources for that person and get them connected to get the shelter that they need. Our goal is always to make sure that a person is in the environment that's most suitable for them. So, for example, there have been senior citizens who have come to our shelter who are not ambulatory and require a lot of kind of acute medical care. Not that we don't want them there, not that we don't love them, but if we're not equipped to provide them with the needs that they have and to be able to do it well, we want to get them into a facility where those needs are going to be met. And that's really the job of the social workers, is to connect that individual with the right facility that meets their specific needs. But we never turn people away. We always work to find the best possible solution for them.
Does Arlington County bring people to you ever?
So far, we have had some referrals. You know, again, we've just really entered that ecosystem, but because of the really proactive engagement we've had with some of the Arlington agencies, they are listing us in their directories and the guides that they have as a resource. And I believe we have received some referrals already at Mission Nova. And I anticipate that that's just going to continue to increase.
Got a comment here that one of our audience members used to attend the church where the Culmore Free Clinic is.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. It's interesting how many agencies are hosted inside church facilities like we are.
Joe, I was also going to ask you another question, since you're now in Arlington. If there are churches, say in Arlington, that might be interested in working with you, what do you need from these churches?
Yeah, so right now the opportunities that we're making available to churches are, there's a variety. As I mentioned earlier, again, part of what we do is provide an environment for people to have a Christian fellowship and Bible study. So we already have one church that is providing a Spanish-speaking Bible study fellowship group on, I think it's Friday nights, and then, or is it Sunday night? It's one or the other, sorry. And then also a lot of them are sending volunteers. More and more are starting to do food drives as well. You know, we're dependent on churches as for part of our financial support. So a number of churches are supporting us financially as well. We tend to want to have those relationships be more dynamic. I mean, obviously we need financial support, but we always want to try to deepen the relationship with churches where, yeah, the check is great, but come and bring a volunteer group so that your congregation gets to do kind of hands-on ministry at our facility. They also, a number of churches have provided, like, for example, all of our English as a second language volunteers. I think every single one of them has come from a church. So if folks at a church want to engage with us, they can reach out to me directly, or on the Mission Nova website, there's actually opportunities there to engage as well, that things that are listed. But if there's something that folks are thinking that we haven't thought of yet, again, we're not quite 3 months into this. We're very open-minded to figuring out ways to partner.
And does the mission provide any kind of transportation for people who don't have the means to get around?
Not yet. That has come up before as well. And I would say there's a strong possibility that in the future we may provide that. One of the beautiful things at this facility, again, is that it's so accessible by by bus routes, but not everybody can even do that. But that's definitely on the possibility list for the future.
Okay. Anything else, Gary, that you have?
No, I don't see any additional questions.
I was just gonna ask, this is Nancy. I think at Greenbrier, they have some vans. Don't they have vans in their parking lot I've seen? I'm not sure what they do with them, but
Yeah, great observation. Thank you.
yeah.
They allow another church called Grace. I think it's called Grace Community Church that actually does their services down at Boston Commons Mall. They allow Grace to park their shuttles in the Greenbrier lot. So they don't technically belong to Greenbrier, but it's interesting that you mentioned that, Nancy, because about 2 weeks ago, we were having the conversation about could we at some point provide shuttle service to help bring people here? And one of the ideas that came up was to ask Grace Church if we could use their vehicles for that purpose. So that's actually very much on the radar as a possibility.
Are you still stuck in traffic, Joe?
You know what? I pulled over here next to a restaurant on Pennsylvania Avenue before the call, and I have sat here parked ever since. So
That's probably safer than driving and trying to talk at the same time. So
yes, ma'am.
we understand. So, well, I'm not seeing any other questions. We've got a little time yet, but if no one has any other questions, we'll let you get back on the road so you can get to work. And thank you for your presentation. This is very helpful, and you may see volunteers either personally or from other organizations coming to help you. This is very helpful.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. If other questions come up, you can feel free to shoot me an email. Everything that we talked about today, most of what we talked about today, there's a website called missionnova.org that lists the volunteer opportunities and all the different services that we're providing. So that's a good place to find some general information, missionnova.org. But otherwise, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay. And your email address is?
It's J Mettimano at missiondc.org. So I'll spell it out. It's JMETTIMAN as in Nancy O, J Mettimano at missiondc, all one word, .org.
Okay. Okay, well, it's 10:54, so we will end this session. And again, thank Joe for his presentation about the mission, the Central Union mission, and we'll look forward to seeing all of you next week, hopefully to talk about tax saving strategies. That's certainly always something we want to hear about. Our guest will be Isabel Barrow, Director of Financial Planning at Edelman Financial Engines. So even though it's not tax season right now, it soon will be. So we can get an early start there. So meanwhile, enjoy your day. It's lovely outside again today, a little cooler, and have a good week.